Welcome to Practical Talk Time. I'm your host, Usha Kumar. Today I have here with me two lovely persons, two lovely ladies who are here to talk about a very difficult subject, and that is something that has brought sorrow to individuals as well as families when one of their own takes their lives, and sometimes intentionally and sometimes unintentionally. So please join me in welcoming Renne and Cheryl Koeber. They are from the Regional Hospice and Home Care in Connecticut. Hello, Sherry.
Hi, Usha.
Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having us.
That's my pleasure. And hello, Cheryl Koeber.
Mm-hmm.
It's lovely to have you both here. And I know that you both work in a company that is a nonprofit agency,
Mm-hmm.
and you actually have some part of that operation, the organization that helps families with dealing with loss of one of their own due to suicide. And so you want to talk about suicide risk and prevention, and also about bereavement counseling, right?
Yes.
So who would like to start first about your organization itself? So please tell us something about, Sherry, you want to go first?
Okay. Well, it's a part of the Regional Hospice and Home Care of Western Connecticut, and it's our bereavement program. It's under the auspices of Healing Heart Center for Grief and Loss.
What is that? Healing Hearts?
Healing Heart Center for Grief and
Center for?
Loss. Grief and Loss.
For grief and loss. Okay. It's a long name.
It is, but it's a lovely place, a very welcoming place. We offer bereavement support and group support for children and families as well as individuals. I am a facilitator of a group that offers support to people who have suffered the loss of suicide of their loved ones. And we meet twice a month, and we provide bereavement support for those individuals who have suffered that loss.
And do you have any material on your website? Or do you give people some material to read through?
Yes, they can go to the afsp.org website, which is the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention, and we're listed on that website, but also they can go to regionalhospicect.org website, and they can find out more about the Healing Hearts program.
I would really like to ask you, first, after introducing Cheryl as well, I would like to go a little bit deeper into your experience as a group facilitator and a social worker dealing with this on a daily basis. So I really want to know how we can prevent or how to spot the people that are at risk or the families that are at risk.
Yes, well, it is one of the top 10 leading causes of death in America. 39,000 people have died by suicide in 2011.
Really sad, because oftentimes these are really young and vibrant people otherwise.
Absolutely.
And there was no reason for them to just go. Maybe they had some strong reasons.
And the highest suicide rate, in fact, is for those individuals between the ages of 45 and 64.
Really?
Yes.
Now, before
yes.
I thought it was teens or very young adults.
Between 45 and 64, and actually the second highest suicide rate is for those over 85.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, yes, that is another topic by itself.
Right.
Right? And Dr. Koeber got well swept into that.
That's something a little bit different, though. That's assisted suicide.
Yeah, so we are talking about something different. So that is why I said that's a whole different topic.
Yeah.
It's a whole different show.
And a whole different show, that's right. Cheryl, can you tell us a little bit about the history of this organization, how long it's been around, how long people are being helped, and if people are not being helped, at least this show will let them know that they can get help somewhere.
Absolutely.
Well, certainly a little bit about the history of Regional Hospice and Home Care has been a local agency in this area for almost 30 years. We are a hospice and home care agency, so we provide primarily medical care to people who are diagnosed with a life-limiting disease. So we care for people at the end of life, and we provide nursing and social work and home health aid and all a gamut of services. However, about 20 years ago, The Healing Hearts Center for Grief and Loss was founded under the very short name of the Children's Program. And the way that was came to be is that children were seen as invisible mourners in society, because people thought that, you know, they don't really grieve. You know, a lot of times they weren't even told about a death. So it was started, you know, in a very small grant by, you know, 2 or 3 people from the hospice organization, just kind of in the back room of our offices, which at that time were on West Street, and has grown into a freestanding bereavement center located at 73 Stadley Rough Road, and has encompassed not only children's grief support, but also adult grief support as well. So we have groups that are specific to different kinds of losses, such as loss of spouse, loss of child, and again, the survivors of suicide loss, which Sherry is the facilitator of. And I think I mentioned earlier when we were chatting that our Healing Hearts Center for Grief and Loss is funded completely by donations, so we don't charge for any of our services, whether that be, you know, the group support at all.
I think that's a good thing for people to know. And a lot of times, price or the cost of something is what keeps them from getting help. And if they know that there is an organization where they can just go talk to someone and they don't really have to pay anything and come and really get the help they want. I know that when I was a young girl, I was very affected when, it was not suicide, but a little boy that I used to play with, you know, a distant relative, he was hit by a bus and he passed away. Bus was backing up, they didn't see the child. And that did affect me a lot. Because
did anybody talk about it with you?
No, not really. But then, yeah, I would say I have several sisters, so sometimes they were my resource. I would just talk to them about it a little bit. But I didn't have any agency or something that would help me with that. And it was quite a while before I was getting over it. And then again, some adults, you know, other people my own age, they died again through accidents. So most of the people, they did not commit suicide. Even that affected me a lot. And if you think that your loved one or your friend or your classmate or somebody just took their own lives, it's hard to put a handle on it. It's hard to understand, and it's just, it seems like that person had an unfathomable kind of mind. So what do you find in your practice?
Well, I think we see, you know, in the Healing Hearts Center, our children's program, we have children there who have had loss from all different kinds of reasons. As people sometimes think it's only for our hospice patients, but in fact, most of the people that come there are from the community. And either their mom or their dad or their sibling has died either from some type of tragic accident, motorcycle accident, tragedy, shooting, or death by suicide. So we have lots of different things. And I think one of the things that's so important for our children in particular, and I don't want to spend too much time on that, is that just seeing that there are other children who may not have a parent, who may have had a brother die, that in itself is so healing. And that's kind of the basis for the work that Sherry does as well, is bringing people together who feel that they're not alone. Because as we know, suicide brings with it you know, terrible shame and stigma sometimes from the community and from people in their own network.
It's almost like a taboo subject. You don't discuss it at home. Nobody wants to talk about death in any case, and certainly not when someone took their own lives. And I think this is a great service that people do need in order, at least in this area, I think, for our region and our Danbury, greater Danbury area. I want to ask you, in your practice, what did you find as risks?
What kind of risk factors for someone who may be struggling with suicidal thoughts? Oftentimes, and I say one of the key risk factors would be isolation, social isolation. When they start withdrawing from their normal support network, when they seem to have lost interest in activities that once brought them joy or that they found pleasure in. You know, addiction, oftentimes you'll see substance abuse and alcohol abuse. Also, you know, when there are a confluence of different occurrences and events in their lives that overcome their coping, for instance, financial loss, or finding out you are struggling with a chronic illness, or you know, any kind of relational loss. So those kinds of risk factors and the protective factors kinds of things that help people are, being in community with others and having a number of connections with different support.
So you brought up a lot of points that I think we have to kind of handle individually because they're each so different. The medical conditions, like the ones that you might have seen in the hospice itself, where people come in, they have terminal disease or they have something really wrong with their body, something not functioning, and they want to take this route. And then the other one is financial, which I find is really hitting home here for me, because in my adult life now, and in the past several years, when the financial meltdown happened in 2008, a very good family that I know, I knew, I would say, the entire family is gone now. The husband was a big management professional, very well educated, from very good families, where the parents of both his wife and he they were in very good positions, retired bankers, and he couldn't find a job. He lost his job, and for a whole 10 months or 1 year he couldn't find a job, and then he kind of found another job, and he was quickly sent out of that for no reason.
Oh goodness!
I mean, according to people that know them. And what happened was he took out the lives of his 3 children, grown adolescent children, and his wife, and his mother-in-law, and then he turned the gun on himself.
Oh, such despair
and so I'm saying financial difficulty can really put strain on a person's psyche.
Absolutely.
A lot of times, this is also a message, because this is a public forum. I'd like to say, when big companies and the guys who are running the companies, they're so greedy for more and more billions of dollars, and they want to make those billions of dollars by cutting down employment in companies. I think that's really pushing more people who are at that very vulnerable level to go for something like this.
Devastating effects.
So if big companies want to do something about it, they should first stop cutting jobs and try to take a little bit of less, $500 million less bonus, and then give the means for income for the normal person. So the financial thing is very important. And another one you said is that mental
yes,
problems.
over 90% of people who die by suicide have an underlying mental illness. So that's very crucial. And typically depression, bipolar disorder, anxiety disorder, those are the more common risk factors as well.
So those are risk factors, as we know. And then what was the other one you mentioned?
Relational loss, divorce.
Oh, yes.
Grief.
Losing a loved one, a love of his life, or love of her life.
Right.
And that drives them to take their own lives.
Exactly.
And sometimes it's a combination of what's going on internally in terms of the mental illness, but also what's going on, in your life, whether it be loss of job or whether it be stressful life event of many different, aspects. But it's hard to really say it's one or the other. But statistics do show, as Sherry said, there's a 90% rate of mental illness.
Mental illness stands high. So how do we find, if you're a family member or a friend or a co-worker, how do you spot and how do you try to prevent it? Who wants to answer?
Well,
you can both answer, give your own perspectives on this.
I think there's things to look for, certainly changes in behavior, someone withdrawing, someone giving away their, personal effects, someone who used to enjoy life tremendously, who now is not finding joy in their usual activities. So I would say, a significant change, and it's an interesting statistics that 50 to 75% of people who do attempt suicide say that they have shared that with someone. So I think, and we can talk about this more, but one of the big protective factors are, ask the questions, encourage the conversation. Don't don't think that if you bring up the topic of suicide and someone that you're concerned about, that you're going to be planting the idea in their head. That's a common myth, but it's really a fallacy.
That's what some people are afraid of. They say, oh, even if that person didn't have it in their mind, now by my talking to them about it and mentioning it, now they'll think, oh, okay, this is an alternative for me.
Not so.
Not so.
So how does a person get help if they know that they are suicidal themselves? How would they get help?
I think it's important, like Cheryl said, to start the conversation. It can be someone who you work with, who's sitting next to you, you feel just hasn't been themselves lately, or they have experienced a series of losses. That's a time to say, how are you doing? Is there anything I can do to help? If you feel that they are in immediate danger of harming themselves or someone else, of course, then you would, refer them to a mental health facility. There's one here in Danbury Hospital, a psychiatric crisis intervention center.
Oh, I see.
Yes. Also, there are hotlines. 1-800-273-TALK is a hotline. But if it's more immediate and you feel they are in crisis, of course, you would remove anything that they could use to harm themselves. But also, you could just call 911.
See, a lot of times I know that as much as the persons who are contemplating suicide, they might want to do it on their own terms, but they don't want, if they are employed, they don't want to be fired from their job. So they don't want anyone to really know. And they think that if they get help, especially in today's medical insurance, whatever system, healthcare system that we have, everything goes everywhere, all the information is there, and people might not, they want anonymity here. So how does one handle that?
Well, I would hope, in light of HIPAA regulations, that their information would be kept confidential. I wouldn't think that would be something that should deter them. And then the hotlines, of course, are confidential and anonymous. So I would encourage that person to seek help, not to let that stand in the way. And nowadays, I think companies are, for the most part, more enlightened about mental illness and want to see their employees seek help and often offer the help within the company. So, I would hope that would not be a deterrent.
I hope that's true.
Yeah.
And oftentimes I think people are afraid to bring it up with friends, perhaps coworkers, because they're afraid the person will get angry at them. And so then you choose, are you going to risk someone getting angry at you, or are you going to take the risk that someone might take their own life? So I think, most people would choose the first option.
Yeah. Why would someone be angry? Maybe if this had something to do with substance abuse, they might get defensive and angry, right? And sometimes mental illness also, they don't want. They say, I'm fine, you're the one who has the mental problem. Anytime if you try to talk to a person, that's what they would tell you, right?
But I think you have to be persistent. So you ask the questions, you encourage people to get professional help, and then you take action. So even if it's going with that person and partnering with them to a hospital crisis line or to a therapist or to a psychiatrist, just to let them know that there's someone who cares.
So one has to be like a true moral support for the other person and not be judgmental.
Right. Exactly. Perfect.
For pure empathy.
Try to understand from their point of view and not say, hey, what you're thinking is wrong. What you want to do is wrong.
Exactly.
So then that becomes like you're the boss and the other person say, who are you to tell me? I'll do what I want with my life.
Well, it's judgmental.
They say you can't talk somebody out of suicide, but you can help open them up and bring them to professional help.
And
so
then
you
to be
think
with them
professional
after.
help will prevent them from
Oh yes, yeah.
getting
help.
on the
It can
suicide
help.
path?
Yeah.
Certainly not all suicides are preventable. However, many can be.
Okay.
And so I think, to err on the side that there's things that might be done that, that can be helpful.
Okay. So Sherry, you wanted to say something about...
Well, I was just going to say, and it's important to follow up after, to stay with them, to offer to go to appointments with them, to provide that companionship, to check in. How are you doing? If it's a family member, to make sure they are taking their medications. And that self-care is important for them as well.
What if a person cannot really take the time to go and take them to their therapy or doctor or anyone because they have their own families or jobs? In that case, how will they get someone else to help?
Well, hopefully they would have a friend. Oftentimes if they are connected with some kind of agency, they'll provide volunteers that will drive them to their appointments. It depends,
Which agencies?
Well, if there's an agency that they're seeking help, oftentimes like in a place like Ann's Place or even Regional Hospice, when we have family members who, oftentimes need to go to the doctor, we will provide transportation. So a lot of the local agencies, I think, will
So a
help with
third
that.
person can call your agency and say, hey, I have this friend or family member.
Well, if they're connected
How
with the
can we help?
agency and somehow.
But that's
Oh, I
not
see.
primarily.
Otherwise,
Yeah.
you cannot do that?
Well, there's people who are better equipped to sort of, manage that type of symptom or that type of need for treatment, depending what the
Okay.
situation is.
I
There's
see.
many
So
social
they should
service
really
agencies.
try to find
Maybe 211.
which
the
medical
info line.
center or which therapy center would be suitable
Exactly.
for them, and try to
And
set
start
up the
there.
appointment. Talk to them. Okay.
But I think, the main message is to reach out to those that you might be concerned about. Another issue that we didn't really bring up is there may be a family component, a genetic component, and exposure to suicide sometimes is a
Okay.
risk factor for completing suicide on your own. Also access to firearms, as Sherry said, remove dangerous objects.
Yes.
So, without being a professional, there are a lot of things that you can do.
That is true. That's another topic, again, very important, I think, where children, when they get bullied by others, then they withdraw, and then the anger and frustration builds so much when they are isolated, and then they go and, like we saw in some schools all over the nation, where they go and shoot up people and then shoot themselves. I think that is something very serious, where the main cause is bullying by somebody, and then bullying is never, should not be condoned. But then often, even when you bring it up to school authorities, they say, oh, it's just bullying, it's just school, you have to learn to put up with it, you'll have to know how to deal with it. But not all children are equipped for that, and sometimes their own family backgrounds might be very gentle and kind, whereas the other person who is bullying would have a family background that's all rough and rowdy, and they think that's okay. They don't even realize they're wrong, and somebody has to tell them they're wrong. So I've had a show here before from Women's Center on bullying and how that causes this kind of problem.
Yes.
So sometimes that's one of the source where we need to stop things at the source,
Absolutely.
rather than let it go to a point where we are left helpless.
I think schools have actually done a pretty good job of being very aware of, bullying issues, and I think there's a real zero tolerance for that. But in most schools, when they know
at least
about,
now I think it's better.
Yes, it is better.
But even 20 years ago, we didn't have that.
No, not at all.
And I think more people are speaking up, and that's helping. And
Yes.
it's because this kind of bullying, this can also happen in workplace. I know that some of the people, adults that go and want to take their lives, is because they don't know how to handle the bullying from their family members or from their coworkers. That is very sad that people can't learn to be nice and kind to one another.
And I think it's the shame. I mean, feeling discriminated against or feeling humiliated, those are also risk factors for dying by suicide. So, I think that's an important thing to consider, that the more we're tolerant as a society, hopefully that will diminish some of the high suicide rates that we see.
We only have a few minutes left. Is there anything else you would like to add in terms of prevention?
In terms of prevention.
Yeah.
I think it's, we're all meant to be in community with each other. And I think it's just reaching out to the person next to you, to your friend who looks like they may be struggling, and coming alongside them and asking them, are you okay? Is there anything I can do to help? To be aware of the people around you and the struggles that they may be having. And for the most part, we don't know. Maybe they've just experienced a profound loss, and we could be a support to them. So that's what I would encourage people.
Recently, we've had many celebrities, people you
Yes.
think are really doing well in their lives,
Yes.
talented and having a good family. Why would they take their lives? For example, we had Robin Williams recently.
You know, of
doing
course,
this, and
yeah.
I think it touched every one of us because he was the guy who made everybody laugh, and then you wonder, wasn't there no one to cheer him up? So what happened with that?
You know, I think we can't really speculate about that, you know, because we don't know. But just what we've heard, it does seem like there were a lot of risk factors there.
Okay.
You know, we had,
so the risk factors that we mentioned just a little while ago. So which ones?
well, again, you know, it's
We don't know the
speculation.
details. Okay.
But you know, supposedly he did have an illness. I believe he'd been diagnosed with Parkinson recently, and had, you know, been working nonstop and had been in rehab. And typically after rehab, it's a vulnerable time for people who struggle with mental illness, because suddenly, you know, they're back out in the world with all their challenges. So, you know, again, it's speculation, but yet you can also see how someone like that is so busy taking care of the rest of the world and making them laugh that, you know, inside.
He had a family,
Yeah.
grown children, everything, finance, everything seemed to be okay.
I know.
And it just boom came, you know, hit everybody.
But see, that's where you
with
look
no-
at the external, but you also have to
Yeah,
look at the internal as well. He is someone who reportedly had struggled with addiction for
For a
you know,
while
many,
now,
many years, and that's a
yes.
huge risk factor.
So this is something intentionally he just said, okay, I don't want the life with this particular medical condition or this particular addiction and everything, and he wanted
Hard to
a
know.
way
what he's
out.
Hard to
thinking.
know.
But then we also have the unintentional ones like Michael Jackson. People know these things because they are celebrities, and you think, oh, I wish we were like them, right? The fame and the money and whatever, the talent. Still,
Comes at a
what
price.
do you think happened? Because that was unintentional, but it, right? He didn't intend to die.
Well, I think
But
fame
he
and
did,
fortune and being in the public eye sort of come with a very huge cost, and some people are able to tolerate it because of, as Sherry mentioned, there's resiliency, there's the protective factors, and some people aren't, and we don't really know why. You know,
So
we
it's
could
hard to-
speculate.
So it's hard to really stop it once it gets going. It's good to catch it in the early stages and do something about it. Thank you very much,
Thank
Sherry,
you.
Thank
Rennie,
you.
and Cheryl.
Koeber.
I just love chatting with you. And please stay, because we want to talk about bereavement counseling and how to take care of that.
Thank you.
Those of you watching, I hope you liked the show. I hope you enjoyed it. If you have any questions or comments, please write to practicaltalktime@yahoo.com. And also be sure to tune in next week to watch more about how the families can get some counseling for bereavement. Thank you. Until next time, goodbye.